If I just listed the ones from the top, I think you're going to see very segmented supply chains. You're going to see, this is for a full service pharmaceutical firm, not just bio alone. You're going to see the small molecule side segment into managing mature products, the mature end of the pipeline, and a big focus on emerging market. That's one end. That will still largely be primary care. The other side is for the Western world, both bio and small molecule, you're going to see a significant focus move towards specialty care. You're going to see a significant move towards bio. In small molecule, the move towards specialty care may readjust our footprint. We may not need as much distribution as we had when the whole Western world was predominantly primary care. Cold chain, frozen chain, not something that large pharma has a lot of. If you're in vaccines, you've got it. If you're in blood frac, you have it. But by and large pharma is not based on cold chain, frozen chain. For bio, it is essentially the business. Super high value products, and it's not just dollars per lot or dollars per unit. It's when capacity is constrained, especially in the early launch years, these products may well be irreplaceable. If you lose, it takes 9 months to move a product from the beginning of drug substance through fill. That's just the life cycle of this product. But we don't have plants sitting idle. So if for some terrible reason we lose 5 lots of product X, quality issue, fire, shipping problem, whatever, it goes out of temperature spec, which if you're not used to temperatures is a problem, or cold chain is a problem you're going to have. It might take 2 years to replace that, and 2 years is too late for the patients associated with these products. Look at the entire picture. I often use the analogy, this is 9-dimensional chess. And many of our companies have historically looked at 1 or 2 dimensions. They'll look at cost, or they'll look at product A. R&D may not be in the equation. Commercial may not be in the equation. You'll look at single data points. I can't tell you the number of conversations that I've sat in where someone says, give me the single demand number. That's misleading. That's single dimensional chess. For a lot of these new spaces, our commercial colleagues, our product development colleagues, the demand on some of the PDL1 products in late phase 3 had a range of 17x. We need to know what those ranges might be in supply chain. They need to know, well, what are our limitations in supply chain? We have to work together on that. With our R&D colleagues, they need to understand that they may now have a 3-year track, whereas it used to be 7 years. We still have a 5 or 6 year track to bring new capacity online. So you've got to play 9-dimensional chess across the whole corporation. A great focus on technology and skill set training, learning how to bring new people into this marketplace. We talked this morning, and there were actually 2 presentations. My own mentioned it, Wolfram's presentation mentioned it. If we just take those rough capital numbers, if we just count those plants, as we said, that's on the order of 35,000 manufacturing employees using a typical ratio of 25%, 35% highly skilled advanced degrees. You pick a number, that's 7,000, 10,000, it's certainly at least 5,000 people. Someone asked the question, well, what about the quality space? I look at the regulators. Do they have the people trained in bio large molecule to get these plants licensed and these products approved? We have to look at different mechanisms to develop people. It's a big focus internally. When we were building perhaps one of these plants out of 10 companies, we could all poach a few folks, we could pick up, it was good for career growth if people were in companies that were flat. When you have 15 companies all building an ocean of capacity, we can't rely on a model that says we'll just poach from one another. That works for a little bit, but we have to look at working with universities. We're working with community colleges. We're looking at higher automation. so that the amount of high skill set in our manufacturing facilities is less than perhaps it had to be 10 years ago. We really need to rethink the staffing models. If you looked at what I'd pray for, I think most of us are really looking for an improvement in downstream technology. It's not automation per se, but with titers, if you go back 15 years or so, I remember the first plant we built, we were looking at titers of 1/10 of a gram per liter. I know that sounds like an antique now, but CMOs are still in 2.5 to 4. Most novel firms, good ones, the ones with a lot of experience, are certainly up in the 4.5 to 8. Some of these big plants we talked about are being planned for 8 to 10. So the plants are no longer constrained by bioreactor capacity. They're now constrained by downstream cycle time. Columns have peaked out at around 2 meters, and it takes real skill, even with an automated column loading setup, which is now the state of the art. It still takes real skill and a lot of cost. One of those column charges is $13 million in resin, and they have a finite lifetime. If we could figure out how to have a more efficient downstream, we could take advantage of these great titers that we now have in upstream. I think one of the things that you have now is you have much more opportunity if you're a beginning professional. This is like the business was a couple of decades back. We were inventing the business from scratch. There weren't 20-year vets that you could go hire because we were inventing the business as it was beginning to roll down the runway. Now we're in a situation where companies are actively looking for how do they get, whether it's an experienced person in small molecule that has no bio, some of that is more translatable, or whether it's people straight out of the university. Our company, for example, has a college graduate program. The MedImmune part of AstraZeneca has worked with several nearby universities, community colleges, etc. We are developing incoming job roles to get people into that. I would suggest to a lot of people coming out of the university, the roles in manufacturing support technology, MS&T, manufacturing science and technology, process engineering, very highly valued roles. R&D is a wonderful community in which to work in bio, but a lot of that is postdoc, a lot of that is a decade of investment before your career really begins to generate huge value. You can come straight out of the university and with several years of experience and training, be deeply involved in the technology of manufacturing. Well, that's not to take away from the areas of manufacturing and science and technology which can indeed require 20 years of scar tissue to be of huge value. But the industry is very much opening up to beginning people in business. I think stay close to the trends, and this is the advice I give our people internally, is understand the entirety of how the enterprise works. In manufacturing, you're less valuable to us if your focus is, well, I just make product. If you don't know the risk of product A versus product B, if you don't know what it means to be working on a clinical product instead of a 30th lot of a licensed product, you can't use your brain fully to help us run the business. I remember years back, the original founder of Genentech had a phrase I still use all the time. He wanted people working on the loading dock to understand what were the top 5 products that we were working on in the company. He didn't expect them to know the science, but he wanted them to know if you were touching something in the warehouse, you should know which were the 5 most critical things that you were handling. So know the business beginning to end. Doesn't mean you have to be a scientist or a commercial salesman, but understand what those ties are to whatever area you are in the business. I've been coming to this one with the exception of a year's gap due to some conflicts. I think, Mark, since you began to put these together, the The focus is right. It's bio. For me, it's operations and supply chain. It's regulatory here. But this, to me, has a very strong focus on operations leadership. In one session, I can bump into, you saw me walking over here, and it's hard to get out of the conversations just to get 5 minutes free to do this. That type of networking, especially for the next 5 to 7 years, is huge. My whole presentation, some of the other presentations were on what's happening to the industry. It's not on what's happening to Sanofi, it's not on what's happening to AstraZeneca, that's important. But what's really important is, how's this all fit together as an industry? And you only learn it in gatherings like this. So far, I think it's unique but not surprising. We don't compare notes when we do these presentations, but what's always enlightening, perhaps, is if you get people that run our elements of the business, supply chain, manufacturing, ops, and they're really strong people in their fields, the issues of the industry are common. Wolfram's presentation, we could have exchanged, now we had very different focal points, but we could have exchanged a lot of the driver slides, and it would have been hard to tell, other than the logo at the bottom, which person put those slides into the deck. And I just think that's a sign that we're aware of what's happening. If we all came in here and had, well, I think the issues are that, someone else thinks the issues, no, they're over here, and gee, those issues don't count, the issues are down here, I'd be worried that either we have the wrong players in the audience, or we as an industry don't understand what our real problems are. I think, one, it's professionally run, and I just wouldn't come if it wasn't. So it's an expectation, and it is professionally run. I think you always have an engaged audience. That's one of the reasons I like this conference. The audience is engaged, the questions they ask are very relevant, and you get a lot of questions. We always wind up having to actually stop the Q&A because we run out of time. And I think you want a thinking audience. We get asked to do so many of these. I limit the ones, most of us limit the ones we do to 1 or 2 a year. If you're just going to an audience that's wondering why they're there for 45 minutes, you've got better things to do with my life. I think the one question would be, and it's really why I wanted to see, and we'll talk to everyone that's here, is collectively as an industry, the challenges that we've taken on for the next 5 years feel as large as I've ever seen them. So a question that we asked at a session a few months back, it was a private industry session, was, can we do this? Can our suppliers do this with us? What came out of some of those post discussions were the dollars are so huge that should we do this? We talked 20 billion in capital. One question, I didn't have time, I should have brought it up during the discussion. The $20 billion in capital is probably associated with $150 to $200 million in inventory, which is capital. That's cash. 100 billion, 200 billion, a fifth of a trillion, to use US government budget terminology, a fifth of $1 trillion that this industry has to invest in the next 5 to 7 years. That's a stunning number. Can we do that? Should we do that? Now, to deliver these products to patient, we do not have a choice, and we will make the investment. But the numbers start to be stunningly large.